Well, good morning.
Music's over. Okay, I got to stop.
Yeah. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good riddance.
So all the ladies and gentlemen on all the ships at sea.
That's it. So what kind of morning are you having, Randall?
I actually had a decent night's sleep as opposed to yesterday where I had to be on Russian time to coordinate with part of our team in Russia. So it was 5:30 a.m. wake up and have a 2-hour meeting, and then went into like 3 stand-up meetings because I'm apparently on all the teams at once.
Goody.
Somehow that worked out. Oops, I think I just accidentally put that up. No.
That's one of the that's one of the great things about Flutter, and a complication when you're trying to do work is we really are all over the world, and South America, Africa, New Zealand, China, Russia, doesn't matter. We're everywhere, kind of like cockroaches. But
yeah, it's sort of like the first thing I say now when somebody says I have a position is I go, what time zone?
Yeah,
because I've actually had some struggles with working with people in sort of the Estonia level of Easternness.
Oh, wow.
Because
that's
it
what,
hardly
11
ever
hours for you?
overlaps.
10, 11 hours.
Yeah. It's because I'm on U.S. West Coast, so it's really a long ways around to Europe. So yeah. Anyway, but the current company is the current company, and parts of them are in Russia. So I'm up at 5:30. Woohoo!
Oh, joy. Yeah, that's we've got quite an interesting team that we're working with. What is it? We've got right now it's London, Vietnam, Bali. Bali is an Irishman, by the way. He's tripping around the world living in Airbnbs because he's in his 20s and he's making lots of money, and he can. So he's tripping around, seeing the world, the life of a senior Flutter developer who's in his 20s and has not many responsibilities. I hate you, Mark.
Yeah.
So,
well, I had that.
Yeah, I mean, we've got U.S. East Coast, we've got all over the place. But to give you an idea, I just poured root beer in my coffee mug.
Oh, great! I don't know if that's going to work.
This is not the desired mixture.
Right. Yes. So. In Duolingo, one of the early Spanish question and answer dialogues involves the girl being so tired that she puts salt into her coffee. And because she was looking for sugar.
I knew a guy when I was in the military. I knew a guy who did that on purpose. He didn't drink. Everybody had to take turns making coffee.
Okay.
Right. So Victor didn't drink coffee. So he felt like he shouldn't have to. So he found this interesting way to get out of it was he made the great big pot of coffee and he poured a bunch of salt in it. Or no, I'm sorry. He made the coffee with salt water.
Oh,
we're in the Navy, we're on ships. We have access to salt water and fresh water.
I'm sure there's a lot of salt water around the outsides of your ships. At least they should be there.
It's rather easy to get.
Yeah.
So anyway, in short, the first person to walk up to it was a very senior enlisted, was Master Chief.
No.
Kind of like God, but not an officer.
Sure.
So he walks up, takes a big swing, spits it out everywhere, screams out, Alvarez! So Vic was banned from the coffee machine, which is exactly what he wanted. So it worked out.
Yeah.
Anyway, don't forget to prefix your questions with a Q, people. We've got a lot of stuff going on.
I said that earlier, not a question mark. I don't know what I was thinking. It's been 2 weeks since I've done this show, so I forgot what it was. Q colon. Put Q in front.
And what's happening is we're trying to scan those. We're trying to do a bunch of other stuff. We're trying to find you links. By the way, there are only the two of us. So at the moment, I'm driving.
Yeah. Yes. And I'm sitting in the back seat, kicking the seat with my feet. Just kidding.
The next state management system to come out needs to be named Yasms.
Yeah.
Because this is totally out of hand at this point.
Right.
People learn to use find widget of exact type or find, I can't remember, or find ancestor widget of exact type, find ancestor state of type. But make sure you don't use them too deep. Read the documentation. I don't care if you're a man, read the directions anyway.
Yep.
So, alrighty, here we go.
So
let's get some of these things out of the way here.
Rules first.
Oh, goodness. That's an interesting one.
Yes.
Oh, that's right. It's not under. We have like 12 different categories of banners.
Okay.
Where did he put? Okay, well, do's and don'ts. Simon apparently has hidden the slides. Hopefully Simon will be here a little bit later. He did have to go away on some important business. He's not sure if he's going to be back in time to catch us in the stream a little bit later. We'll see. Simon's either going to make it or he doesn't, but he's off doing things he needs to be doing. That said, do's and don'ts. Do be respectful, be excellent to each other. Don't act like you're on Reddit.
Don't repeat your questions often enough that we see 2 instances of it in the same screen.
Yeah, if you look at the chat and you can still see your question, don't post it again.
We're seeing it.
I don't care how long it's been. You can see it.
When it says Q colon, we flag it. I flag it. Actually, I do most of those. And right now we have 5. So we've seen 5 questions so far. So although we haven't answered any one of them yet, we know that there's 5 in the queue. So we're pretty good at this now. We've been doing this for a while. So if you put a queue, it'll happen. Also, if you ask something that's kind of like a question, I don't know whether it's to talk amongst yourselves because y'all are smart people too, or whether it's for us. So please put Q if it is for us, because then they will definitely get flagged and put in the queue. That's my personal rule. Sometimes I'll ask in the chat. I'll go, "Was this for us or was this just you to discuss it?" So I try to remind you if you're not following the rules for getting it into our queue. Okay.
And just to let you see real quick, this is what I'm seeing. Okay. Sorry, you can see over on the right-hand side where, okay, then there it is. You can see on the right-hand side, we do see all of your chat. We have your questions flagged, just because it might be a while before we actually start answering questions.
Not today.
It's duly noted.
Today we're going to be
duly noted. So yeah, I'm sorry, but that's a bit of a sore point. We start ignoring questions if we see it like here and then here and then here again. It's like, you're not a 5-year-old. This is not candy. I want candy. No, I want candy. No, I want candy. No. Sorry, it's been one of those weeks.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, other do's and don'ts. You know what? One that we don't normally do is keep up with the chat and read other people's questions.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times we will get asked and answered, as a lawyer says. You ask a question that we answered 15 minutes prior, and maybe you just came in. That's fine. We'll just let you know. You can go back and watch the rest of the stream. The only other big one that we're really worried about is harassment, bigotry, misogyny, stuff like that. Short version, we share a ban list. If we have people who are out of control, we let all the moderators on Reddit know. We let the owners of the Discord know. As many of you who have been in Flutter for quite a while know, Luke Pighetti is a very nice and kind, gentle soul who would never beat you over the head with a baseball bat.
Yeah.
Hi, Luke.
And can we ask one thing of the audience right now? We love to have this be a large group. We want a lot of questions. We want a lot of people knowing about this stuff. So if you have one friend that you can tell that this is live right now, please do so.
Yep.
tweet it,
we end
or
up
local
and
chats.
if you're
or whatever.
watching this later, one of the things that we're pointing out here is we typically will get 20 to 40 live and well over 1,000 views afterwards. But the problem is we don't have the questions of the 1,000. We're only getting questions from the people here. And that, you know, a lot of times that'll fill the whole time. Absolutely. But sometimes it won't.
Yep.
So, and I do have a hard stop today in about an hour and 15. But hopefully Simon will show up and maybe take us out the last 30 minutes there.
Yep.
All righty. So let's see here. I'm not going to check things off the list immediately, Randall, unless we answer them. Here, this is the way we're going to do things now. Elijah has asked, have we checked out Remy's latest custom lint package? And I'm afraid my answer is no.
Me no either.
Yeah, we've been like up to here in work. A lot of times we create the links for YouTube about half an hour before the stream starts. But one other thing though, Elijah, I'm not going to take your question off the list because hopefully Simon will be here and maybe he has taken a look at it. So we're just going to put that one back in our pocket.
Okay.
Where's the best place to put API or the API key for an API? Simon answers this one all the time, but basically it's not in the app, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It is somewhat safe to put it, like when you're building mobile, to put it in your app, provided you don't have it as a plain string. So it has to either be like, you know, base 64 encoded so it doesn't look like a password or something like that. You have to do something odd to it. So because trivial way to scan through and get all the strings from a binary. So I think that's it. In the web, you're basically hosed because because everything pretty much has to be in the clear, or at least pretty obvious in there. Yeah, you can do some fancy things with obfuscation, but all I got to do is run the code up to the point where it uses the password, and there's the password right there. It has to be. So yeah, there's really no way around that.
That reminds me, if you are looking at now, hopefully they're escalating this, but if you're looking at using Figma with DRM, so far at this point, you do have to host the videos with Figma. I'm sorry, not Figma. Did I say Figma? I meant Vimeo.
You said Figma a couple times.
Root beer coffee does it to me every time.
Right.
Yeah, if you're using Vimeo and you're trying to use DRM, what ends up happening is if you are using the embedded player, if you're using an iframe, it is transmitting the token in the clear.
Wow.
So somebody who intercepts that URL can just turn it, or even the user can copy that URL and pass it around to all their buddies, and your DRM is now worthless. The thing is that you still can't do a screen capture. That still works. But since the auth is right there in the URL, I mean, kind of useless, right? So Vimeo has been contacted about this, and they've been made aware of the situation. And they are working on it. Now, if you are hosting your videos with Vimeo, then they can handle that a lot better. But if you are hosting your videos anywhere else right now, trying to use their API, your DRM is basically nullified. And,
well, we're getting good questions in, so this is
Well, sorry, but the point was that if you're going to use Vimeo's API instead of hosting with them, you need to be careful about what's going on and ask them about that auth. So let me see here. Is it possible to, is it possible to capture 4 to 6 wall images of a room one at a time and show them in a grid? Get a camera plug-in and use a grid view. I mean,
Yep.
it's what you're asking here is to help you build your app. And I'm sorry, we're here for general Flutter questions. If you need a way to approach a strategy on something like this, I would suggest Stack Overflow. But I mean, to specifically capture some wall images and put them in a grid, that's how to build your app.
So the answer is yes, it is possible, and you'll have to figure that out. I don't get the last part of that statement though. Don't want images to be stored locally. They've got to be stored on your phone for a little while at least, because you have to put them all up in a grid.
You can upload them somewhere else, but you know.
Oh, yeah.
And if you don't want them stored locally, then just don't put them in persistence. You know, they'll go away when the app is closed.
Yeah. Okay.
There's a question here about testing native code within the Flutter app. That one has been around before. Simon has gone into that one, and it's extremely difficult, or it's tricky, and we're going to let him deal with that one. But don't worry, we are not ticking it off the list. It's still here. Okay. Have you worked with Figma to Flutter at all, Randall?
No. I played with it a couple times to see what it did. It's the whole idea of needing a mock-up system for Flutter seems a bit ludicrous to me, since hot reload can pretty much accomplish the same thing with writing real code. You know, you're not writing in some meta language or drawing with some drawing tools that then have to be translated. You're actually doing the real thing as you're laying stuff out. And even if all you have is mock pictures or placeholders, I guess they call them, you know, you're still able to do your majority of your layout and then start wiring in functionality that's going to be useful in the end. So no, I haven't done much with Figma. I don't think visually very much anyway. So I'm much more of a code-ish guy.
All right, here. I'm just researching something else real quick. Now, this is what I mean about where we juggle.
Yes.
So here's a good one. For beginners, are you supposed to use a stateless widget when using state management libraries, or are there still scenarios when you use stateful? And the answer is you got to look at your situation. It's particularly, I'm going to look up, what was it? Ephemeral state, and it's app state and ephemeral state, I believe.
Well,
go ahead.
Can I jump in?
This up. Okay. Yeah, go for it.
I would sort of recommend, just as a first cut, and this is a broad stroke, but should give you most of the sense of it. You use a stateful widget with local state for state that only needs to be updated and acted upon when it changes within the same widget. The moment you start
coder, and I have questions if the person is understanding that phrasing.
Yeah, yes. So in other words, if I have a stateful widget, I have state associated with it. I put certain members into the state part of the stateful widget.
So you create variables in the stateful widget, and those variables have a state.
Yep.
Which is why we need the state object to track to track the status of the state, of course, meaning that if you have a color variable for your car, well, the state of it might be blue. You might change the state to red.
Yeah. So as long as you're updating those values and you're wanting to notice when they change those values, is all within the context of a widget or its subwidgets, then a stateful widget is fine. You don't need a state management solution. When you, except that set state really is a state management solution, but let's not distract myself there. State management more applies when you have to share data between widgets, where for something like provider or inherited widget would be up and down the context chain, or for something like RiverPod would be sort of anywhere to anywhere, which I think is more flexible, which is why I prefer RiverPod, but I don't want to get that discussion started yet. But it doesn't mean you would use either stateful widgets as an entire choice or state management, because again, in your program, you will have two different kinds of data that belongs localized to a particular stateful widget and its children, and data that's shared across widgets, across trees of widgets. So that's the difference. And you could use both at the same time. And I have written code that uses both at the same time.
Yeah. And basically, to put it even more simply for anyone who's having a little trouble following that, let's say you have a button and it's an on-off button. Well, the state of the button is on or it's off. And let's say you have the text showing the state of the button on or off. Now, here's the thing. If the only thing that it's doing is controlling whether or not the button is green or red and not affecting anything outside the button, there is no reason on earth to share that information with anything outside the button. So you would not put that into a state management system. All right, that's ephemeral state. Now, then you would have app state, which is state that does need to be shared with other parts of the app and does need to be known and tracked. So, okay then. That was interesting. Sorry. I'm pushing buttons over here and interesting things are happening. But the button is the only thing that needs to know at that point. So all you're going to need to do is track that local variable in a stateful widget and then change it with set state, rather than having your app go to all the trouble to fetch it from somewhere else. So that's the main difference. You will absolutely want to use Randall went poof. Hey, Nick. Excuse me.
Yeah.
That URL is pretty big for this. Just do a search for ephemeral state and app state in Flutter, and you will find this document right here. It's really handy, really good. It's part of the instructions. I mean, the manual. Again, just because you're a guide, read the instructions anyway.
I will. I'll put this in code.
Yeah, that pretty much beats that to death.
Yeah, I'll put this in code just so it doesn't trigger too many people. But for my fellow arachnophobes, I had an incident here.
Oh, righty there.
And that's all I'm going to say.
Okay. So
now
let me see here. We've got two GDE questions, and I think actually they can tie into each other. We're going to take the second one first. You've applied to the GDE program, but unfortunately you were not selected. You're trying to be the first GDE in Gaza. So what is the criteria? Well, first of all, I am also in the process myself, and it's gotten very tough because they now have enough Flutter GDEs and they're not particularly looking for a lot more, at least in North America. If you're in Gaza, you're going to be in the MENA region. I know Mr. Salim is an extremely busy man. He doesn't have as much help as a number of the other regional heads have. In North America, they have a number of different reports underneath the regional, but I believe Salim is handling a lot of that himself. The criteria in essence is, well, first of all, GDE is not something you qualify for. GDE is Flutter, is Google's way of saying thank you for things you're already doing in the community. That said, what they're looking for you to be doing is a lot of community outreach. They're looking for it to be on a now they're looking for it to be on a very deep technical level. Going out and helping a lot of beginners every week is not going to cut it anymore. Also with GDE, of course, there's your reputation throughout the community. That's a big thing. And that you're out there helping people, but that you're also showing your expertise. And when I say expertise, I mean things that are quite deep. It's not enough just to teach rows and columns. You've got to teach the whole 6-step multi-child layout algorithm and how it works and what the dangers are of doing things like mixing a flexible with an expanded. And then giving them the same flex, but using a child in the flexible that doesn't take up half, or that doesn't take up as much space as it would if it was 50-50. Because what you have to realize, if you don't understand the algorithm, is when you have multiple things that have the same flex, what's happening is the algorithm is reserving a percentage of the space for each of those. It will take things that have a set size, take those first. It will figure out how much space is left, and then it will divide that space up based on the flex values. So if you have a flexible with a flex of 1 and an expanded with a flex of 1, it's going to reserve half of that space. But what if the child in the flexible only uses a little bit of it? Well, then it looks like your column is short or your row is short. And you say, it's supposed to be max. Main axis size is supposed to be max. Why isn't it taking up all the space? It is taking up all the space. The child's not taking up all the space, and the empty part of your row or column is transparent. You're seeing through it. You're not seeing the end of it. And it's things like that are going to differentiate you and possibly get you the nod. You want to get into the weeds these days. You want to be doing talks in person. They're mainly interested in people giving talks, not as much Stack Overflow and things like that. So those are the general criteria that they're looking for. And it's not even really so much criteria. They're looking to have certain people they can point to and say, hey, this person puts out good information. They're a good person to learn from. You got to have something to show. You got to have something to teach, right? You can't be like Randall, who got it early on when telling people the difference between a stateful and stateless widget got you GDE. Oh, I'm sorry. Randall's here? Never mind.
Hey. Let's not diminish what it took to get to there.
No, I know. And
if I can elaborate for a second, actually being a GDE and actually being in these meetings with fellow GDEs, one of the things they said is that the qualifications and strategies are changing right now. They're in flux because they're trying to figure out how best to use the GDE program and who really belongs in it. But I can tell you a couple of their primary criteria is having good technical knowledge, as Scott's been saying, but also being good with people. So that means being comfortable in front of the room to do presentations or virtual room, whatever it happens to be. And it's also a bit of publish or perish. So that means you've got to be coming out with blog entries. You've got to be coming out with videos. I've got 66 to do, and I haven't been working on them.
And that's to harken back for a second here. Sometimes people get expert's disease.
Yeah.
And they just throw out terms that people with experience will know.
Mm-hmm.
If you've never heard of publish or perish, what that is in the United States, there are two kinds of universities. There are teaching universities and there are research universities. If you are a professor at a research university, you are expected to do research and write papers on that research that helps the university gets funding grants. And if you don't do that, then you're dead weight and you're in the way and perish. You're gone.
Yeah.
So publish papers or get out. And really, GDEs, they have enough people who could be GDEs that if you're not out there helping people, then why are you there?
Yeah,
Is
exactly.
basically Randall's point.
Yeah. So technically good with people, and ability to communicate in various media like blog entries, screencasts, this kind of show. This is one of my credited items that I put in 3 times a month or however often I do it. And it helps because people really love this show. And it gets back to Google about that. Thank you guys for telling Google this is a good show. It's not produced by Google. We're not Google. I'm only a GDE, which has nothing to do with being Google. I could not be a Google employee and be a GDE at the same time.
The times that we have someone who works for Google on the show will make it very, very clear.
Yeah.
Okay. We're talking about people like Craig LeBenz, people like, and Craig's the main one lately. But there are others when we can get Fitz on here. There are times when we have been able to get Tim Sneath. Unfortunately, not so much anymore. Tim has become a very, very busy guy. Flutter has gotten very popular. And when you're the manager of and over all of Flutter and Dart, both, you don't get much free time anymore.
We need Kev Moo back.
Yeah, Kevin Moore. Which Kevin Moore? We need both Kevin Moores. Let's put both Kevin Moores in here at the same time.
That would be great. The all Kevin on Kevin show.
There you go. We have that problem in Zoom sometimes with 2 marks.
Yes.
But anyway, one of them's in Bali, so he's in a different time zone. I hate you still. All righty. The next one actually is a personal question for you, Randall, which will give me time to refill my drink and not put it in my coffee mug.
So what was your Flutter
follow-up here?
Like? I'll give you the brief version because there's actually a long story for this, but the short version is that my friend Wim Leeler, who at the time was doing Flutter DevRel, longtime friend, like 30 years, I had visited him one day at his Google downtown Portland offices. I live in Portland, Oregon, so that was convenient. And I figured I'd at least get a free lunch, but it turns out I got my first solid demonstration of hot reload. And I really thought Flutter had a lot to offer. And fast forward to like 9 months later, I embedded myself in Flutter. I'd given talks at like Southern California Linux Expo, Scale, and other places to talk about why Flutter should be your next mobile platform. At that time, it was just mobile. And Wim says, you ought to consider being a Google developer expert, because with your background in teaching Perl and writing about Perl and doing conferences about Perl, it would be a natural fit for what we're looking for in GDEs at this point. And he submitted me the program. I went through my 3 interviews, and I became a Dart and Flutter Google developer expert even before they had that as an official category. This was how early in the cycle it was. So I became a web GDE for a while. I said, you didn't ask me about web, although, I knew the web really well. You didn't ask me about web, but for a while I was web GDE, and now finally, 3 years ago, I became a Dart and Flutter GDE, one of a very limited number. I mean, there's probably like something like 400 of us around the world, 100 of us in North America, but that's not a lot. That North America counting all the way down to Central America there. So that's my short journey. Let's see, what tips would you leave? Again, I think we've talked about the tips, which is, and also get noticed. Be out there, be answering questions on Discord, be answering questions on Stack Overflow. I see the titles to 200 Stack Overflow questions a day. I read most of them, and I answer probably 5 to 10 every day. And that's part of my commitment as a GDE. It's part of what I do is I'm helping people. And sometimes I have to research the answer, but that's great because then it's no longer just altruistic. It's that I also get smarter. I get to find out something that I might not have known before. And so this idea of sharing what you know and sharing right up to the edge of what you know is very valuable. And I'm a much smarter Flutter programmer today than I was 2 months ago, than I was a year ago. I mean, I just constantly get to incrementally increase my knowledge, which makes me more valuable to my clients and potential clients. So that works out
And
well.
that actually, that's really the whole thing, is getting out there, talking to people and helping people.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm going to put the link to this in the chat, but let me see. I got to take that down for a moment. Yeah. From GDG to GDE. Okay. You're going to want, anybody trying to get GDE is going to want to see this talk. This was done by our good friend, Judy Camacho. He is Colombia, I believe. Yeah. So, and he is with GDG down there, and he is done Flutter GDE. Judy is a great guy. He walks you through it, but the end result is stop worrying about getting your GDE and start worrying about getting out in the community, talking to people, helping people. And the only change that I would say to that now is making sure that you also do a good bit of helping people on a very advanced level. That's technical, but it still comes down to quit worrying about trying to get GDE. Okay. GDE is just a badge that says, hey, this person's done a lot of talks and helps a lot of people, and they've not been an idiot about it, and they have not led people astray. You know, they give good advice. And that's what GDE really is. So stop worrying about trying to qualify for it and start doing the things that Google is looking for, so they can point to you and say, hey, this person helps a lot of people. They give really good advice. You should have them come talk at your group or whatnot. Anyway, now that that's been completely beaten to death.
I think so. Absolutely.
We're actually going slow on Whoop, wrong one.
Oh.
We're actually going slow on purpose, folks, because Simon's not here yet.
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny. I just saw him send a message on Slack through his phone. Okay, moving on. There are a number of different answers to this one from Mendel. How to develop a REST API. Elijah also did mention some of the packages there: Shelf, Conduit, Dartfrog. There are also tutorials. I will look something up here while Randall blabbers into a microphone and distracts you so that I can do some research.
I would like to say that the maturity and flexibility of a Dart application that's acting as a web server, which is what REST typically is really is really strong and has really attracted a lot of interesting things. You know, the fact that you can write a Google Cloud function completely in Dart, and you'll probably use Shelf for that because Shelf is Google corporate supported HTTPD code, whereas the other two that were mentioned, Dartfrog and Conduit, probably don't have anything to do with Shelf. They probably have their own stack, but all good. You know, it's good that we're getting more and more of these because it's nice to be able to write like we were doing back when we were writing JavaScript in the browser and JavaScript in the form of Node.js on the server. We can now use Dart end-to-end as full stack. So we've got Flutter on or Flutter Web or even Dart Web, which not too many people are using anymore, but it's still there. And then on the server side, we've got Dart Cloud Functions or just standalone Dart web servers.
You can quit stammering now, Randall. I found it.
Okay. That was just enough time, huh? All right, cool.
Yeah, pretty much, except now I got to reshare my screen again.
Oh, yeah.
So that banner right there, I will put that link in YouTube, and there we go. So as you can see, there is something in the Flutter cookbook about this, and the Flutter cookbook is actually part of the documentation, how to do stuff. So they're using the HTTP package in this one. So they're showing you almost a manual way to do it. Was it Dart HTTP? Is a very simple package. It's basically it's framework maintained. It's interesting. I'm not going to go into details, but there's some stuff going down right now. If you are a package maintainer, be on the lookout for someone possibly sending you emails with a Google email address asking for access to your repo. It looks like somebody's phishing. So, yeah, Google, as far as I know, the Flutter team is never going to ask for access to your repo. Just no, don't do it.
Yeah.
So anyway,
do we have another question?
Let's see here.
We'll continue here.
Oh,
I love this question. I'll take it.
Yeah, it's. I was just going to say, I just make another function that's async and then run it in an init state.
Well, I've seen this surprisingly enough, and this is why I'm jumping at this question because I've seen 3 different places where people have done this, not understanding what they've done, and they get confusing results as a result. And so they're trying to figure out, how do I fix it? Well, here's the thing. Init state must be synchronous. It cannot otherwise be, because it needs to be done by the time build starts. It must be complete before build starts. So if you put anything that's async in there, for one, you can't put a wait because you have to mark it async, and that just really gets into a mess. If you just simply launch a future, yeah, the future will start, but it will almost certainly not complete by the time you start build. Wow, your future hasn't completed yet. You probably don't have data you're expecting. So
now, here's a possible perfect example of that. Let me.
Is it the paste bin that he pasted?
No, this is something I was playing around with and probably being a bad boy. Hang on a second. It's not wanting to play nice. There we go. Yeah, I was goofing around with something. You know how you do something quick and dirty and don't pay attention to best coding practices because you're just trying to get it to work for a moment. I was playing around with Postgres, and okay, that's interesting. You didn't see that. Oh, good. You really didn't see that. Never mind. So right here, we've got our init state. It is not async.
Bigger.
Okay.
Bigger.
All right. Bigger.
Perfect. Whoa.
Woo, baby. Okay. So we can ignore that. Like I said, this is just an experiment.
Okay.
So we call init state. We do the super first, not last.
Yes.
We open up the connection. Okay. And yes, my password it's not really password. So now we're going to run the select query in init state. And this is probably where Randall starts crying.
Yeah.
So we run a future. It's a void. It's async. We're going to take the query up here and we're going to run it on the database. And then what we're going to do is we're going to print the results and then return data as just a local variable. I'm doing that rather than returning it directly, so I can call it as a void. So Randall,
the way to fix this.
Because we're calling init state and we're calling a future in init state, but
In your
problem.
state, you need something that will hold the future that comes back from that. So you create a variable up in your state that is future, whatever the return value is, the type.
So you're
Future.
talking about, basically what you're talking about is we should make return data a future.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, wait, is it returning data or is it returning a future? It's a future of that. It's a future of that. It's right. You have the
It's a
right
future
shape.
void, which is just setting it. Now we can change this.
Yeah, you need it to be where that's the actual result coming back somehow. So
Well,
the basic pattern is in state, you create a variable to hold the result. In a init state, you trigger the future and store the future in that variable you just created. And in your build, you then use something like Future Builder, which can choose one of two code paths depending on whether the future is complete or not.
okay.
So that's the pattern you want. If you need to do async stuff right away and the results need to be visible in your build,
Now,
then you need to have that kind of coordination. The future goes in as a variable in the state. The future gets initialized in an init state. And then in your build, you use a future builder that can see, is it completed or not? If it's not completed,
okay.
show a placeholder. If it is
So
completed,
this is not what you
show
were
the
talking
data.
about. I'm purposely breaking this, I believe.
Okay.
Did I break it correctly?
I
So
think that's
here we
right.
go.
Yeah.
We're going to do a late final. Here's our future being returned.
It needs to be
Okay.
not final. It needs to be not final because you're going to update it in your
Oh.
init state.
Oh, that's true. It's future. You can make a list final and change the contents, but you can't make the
Right.
future final.
Right.
There's more than one possible future. We live in the multiverse.
Yes.
So anyway, we are calling this, but once again, we're calling the function for the future in an it state.
Yep.
So same problem.
No, I think that's well. You've got to put that future. Is DB connection the variable that you just had? I can't remember.
DB connection is the open
that the
connection
variable?
to the Postgres database.
But is that the variable? Where's your data? Well, return
No,
data.
the
That's the one,
data
return
right
data.
there. Return data
Okay.
equals run select, and I've got
Okay.
run select as a future.
That will update
But
that. Right. Right.
but
I
it's
think that
it's
works.
basically looking to have that before building.
Yes.
So what we need to
exactly.
be doing is actually having a future builder
inside the build that's
right,
watching
and then
that
use
variable.
run select as the future.
Yep.
Okay. I'm not going to go through and do all this, but basically
Yeah.
you put a future builder here.
I think I
Okay.
gave the pattern for that. Yes. So
Yeah. Because we put a future builder inside the UI. And what we do is we hand the run select to the future.
I
in the
believe
future
the
builder.
Flutter
Or
code lab for fetching stuff from an API has this pattern in it, which is probably the first time I saw it.
okay.
I don't know for sure, but anyway, let's we still got some other questions. Let's move on.
Yes. Okay. We can only slow down for Simon for so long.
Yes, exactly. We got stuff to do. Okay. What is your preferred way? We just answered that. That's that one. Different question. Oh, you're finding it.
Yeah. Okay. Here's an easy one. Super
Okay.
init state first, not last. Okay. That's a real. This is better with a visual aid.
But the short answer is it's what they tell you to do, and it will break if you don't.
Sort of. But yeah. Okay. Let's say there's that. Now there's another thing that we need here. Okay.
Dispose.
Come on. Really? Seriously?
Yeah, really. Why isn't that auto-completing?
If you figure it out, tell me.
I don't use your editor.
Yes, I know. There. Shut up. Why are you still complaining? This method overrides must call super, but it doesn't. Shut up.
So it doesn't have the super call yet. Just
get in there. Now, we're going to ignore that linter rule for a moment and just say that here's our init state and here's our super and here's our dispose and here's our super. Now, the super is basically the class that your class has been derived from. So house is a subclass of foundation. Not technically, but it works for this example. You can't build the rest of the house. You can't build the second or third floor of a house until you build the stuff under it first, because that's what it's based on. So in order to build your widget, you have to build your super first. Okay. And then you do.
A comment from the chat room explains you should be saying super dispose there. You got super init state. Down a little bit.
Oh,
right
good
there.
grief.
Yes.
Good God. Thank you.
Chat room. Thank you, chat room. That's
man.
Osama Karim.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Morning. Well, here's the thing. Okay, you build this first, then you build the stuff for your widget on top of it. So let's say now you have to clean everything up. And you do it this way. What you just did was you blew out the foundation that your house is sitting on without tearing down the house first. Neat trick, because gravity will normally prevent this. But in this case, you can end up with problems. Things will not be properly disposed of, especially if you're using a bunch of streams. That can be an issue because you haven't disposed of your streams, which is naughty. Don't ever tell me when I use that word. It's bad. So what you do in this case, and this is tied into the init state because init state and dispose are two sides of the same coin. What you do here is you tear down the stuff on top and then you get rid of the foundation. So you build the foundation first, then build the stuff on top, tear down the stuff on top first, tear down the foundation.
And there's two things to see in the docs that will help you remember this. If you don't remember this conversation, at least remember to go look at the documentation for state, because it gives you every single step of a widget build up and tear down, which is really interesting information if you haven't seen it before. The other is that the documentation for both init state and dispose say specifically init state, super init state must be at the beginning, and on dispose it says super dispose must be at the end. It actually says that in the docs. That's how we know we need to do that.
Yeah. And we just explained to you why.
Yeah.
Okay. Dave, is set state calling the state of the entire app or just the state of the stateful widget in which it was called? Just the state of the stateful widget. And that's what makes Flutter so cool.
And depending on optimization, it's not even the whole widget. It might be that some of the parts can get to be reused, so it might not be a total rebuild. It depends on exactly how the dependencies have changed for the child widgets as well.
Sorry, I just in some of that in some of that other drama I was talking about. This is basically the answer that just came through in Slack for someone, which is pretty cool. No.
Okay.
If someone with a Google email address sends you an email asking you for unrestricted access to your repo, tell them to go away. It's like your bank asking for your password. If you don't know it, you're obviously not my bank. Alrighty then. Guess what? We're going to scroll back up to the top of the questions to see if we can get some help from a guy who I hear might be about to walk back into his house.
Calling all angels,
maybe.
calling all dev angels.
Maybe.
But what?
There we go. Hey, boss.
Hey.
There we go. That's it. You get the mic and camera this time.
We've basically been skipping some of the stuff that is very, very deep technically.
Deep. We do like a deep question.
Yeah, well, and one other thing too, for those watching, if you've ever given presentations, you know what it is to have to study the topic of the presentation so you can handle any question thrown at you. Now imagine doing it on all of Flutter and Dart. Okay. There's no way on earth any one of us is going to be able to answer every single question that you can throw. But we do try. That's why we have a team of people. And I did get a question today about whether people could come in and ask general Java questions. And it's tough enough trying to be able to handle any Flutter question. There's no way we can field any question in the world on any programming language. No, just we're not going to open the door to that.
I mean, you've got general programming concepts, right? So you've kind of got like, what do you call it? Patterns and various things, and that's fine.
True.
But
those
talking
are
about
applicable.
Like what interface from the Java standard framework you should use for doing the XYZ. Yeah. I mean, you can go look that up online as well. And the other side of that is you took Java, or do you mean Android? Because then that's another thing. That's separate.
Here we go.
So
let's see. We've got a few of them here. And actually, I just want to double check on one. I think we ticked it off and maybe shouldn't have. It's about where to put the API key for API.
In your app. Sorry. So the fact of the matter is you've kind of got a couple of things to think about, right? One is most API, I'll be honest, most API keys, you just ship them inside your code, use a constant, stick them in there. An API key itself is not inherently public. Sorry, it's not inherently private, right? It is, don't get me wrong, it is private. You don't want to just give it out to anyone, but at the same time it's there for the client to connect to the API. It's a requirement for the client to actually have access to that, right? So to connect to the server or whatever. So you're going to have to ship it as part of your app per se. Now, what a lot of people, other people do, is they will have a endpoint that they connect to. They might when the app first starts up, it goes off to I don't know, the cloud bucket or whatever, accesses an JSON file, and says, okay, this JSON file has API key for this is this, for that is this, and so on. And that means you're not shipping them and you can change it at any time. So if someone leaks your API key or starts misusing it, you can then change it.
That's what about option. Encrypting that and then decrypting it client side?
And that's another thing. Most people do that. And but the thing is, like, again, you have to ship the encryption keys as part of your app. So there's no, it doesn't stop anyone from getting to them, right? At the end of the day, if someone wants to work hard enough, they'll get your API key, right? So it's about putting up some barriers, but nothing that's just gets in the way of you developing, right? So one of the things that most people do is they will do something like an XOR encryption. You do an XOR encryption on a string, it turns into like a binary set of bytes. You put that as in an array in your app, and then when someone searches the code for strings, like that's a kind of normal reverse engineering thing to do, to look for the strings inside the app, and they won't find any because it's just a set of bytes. And then at runtime, you take that array of bytes, you decrypt it, and using a fixed key that's inside your app, There you go. You've got it. Again, you could do that and have that, so your remote keys are encrypted as well, and then you're getting back just a blob of binary, bytes.
So in other words, you're making life very difficult for people who are trying to figure out.
It's always a cat and mouse game. The fact of the matter is, if someone's running your software on their hardware, they have the end say. Always.
It's just a matter of how much work they want to put into it.
Because at the end of the day they can literally take the process. They can actually command the process to go into step-by-step mode. It steps over each process instruction, and you can see the value of the registers, and you can debug the raw machine code of the app. That's what it's there for when you need to do that, right? So at the end of the day is they can go do that if they want to and work out anything they like. They'll work out that you're using X and you can do this and that. They'll work out that you're using RSA 248-bit, 2048-bit encryption keys and whatever else. I mean, yes, protect them, but not to the absurdity, of all else, right? That's what I said to that.
I just got a quick little something I want to point out.
How's my audio, by the way? Is it okay?
Your audio is fine, actually, for once. Anyway, Mendel, please don't do this. This is what we were talking about. Your question's right there, and you're repeating it again right there. So we're getting to it. You notice how it's got a star.
Well, I mean, no, he's corrected it, right? Like, what is exactly as a widget is kind of. But
I'm sorry. I thought it was just a repeat.
But yeah, we do want to just start with repeats because we will get to all the questions anyway. Let's what's next?
There are some people who have been waiting for a while here. Have you tried Remy's new linting package?
What now package? Custom lint? Nope.
So none of us have had any chance to work with it. Remy, if you're listening, see if the I company, which I'm not sure if he wants it said where he's working or not, but see if they'll let you off to have some time, or actually it's actually
published by no, Custom Lint is published by Invitace.
Oh, it is published by Invitace. Okay, so I imagine Remy's had quite the hand in it, Elijah, but yeah. Okay. Unfortunately,
I'm looking at it now. It seems pretty straighthtforward.
Yeah.
I mean, I
guess
what was the question? Like, have we tried it, or
have we tried it? I'm a little bit unsure.
I haven't had the need to make a custom lint for anything specific. I can see how I could use it in a few cases. That would be really helpful. Yeah, I don't know.
Moving on, we talked about Figma to Flutter at work and haven't really done much of anything with it. Have you done much experimentation with it? Font sizes and font weights are looking different on the emulator. Now,
welcome to reality.
Yeah, really. And here's the other thing. Okello, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Step 1, tell your designer that they are limited to using Material 3, which means they're limited to using the text sizes that are specified in Material 3. A lot of times these designers will go make up their own sizes. Yeah, and it's consistency as well.
Consistency, you're not just like every screen has a different stuff going on.
But I've seen designers.
But yeah, but also what you've done here is you probably made a classical thing. Your phone is like an iPhone 13, and your design is on an Android and a Pixel 2 or something, right? So what you're seeing in the design is not the same ratio or pixel size and pixel device pixel ratio as the one you're running it on. So they look different, right? Like you don't ever build a program to look exactly like that, right? Like you have to have the ability to scale appropriately in all sorts of different dimensions, including font size. Now, the font size and font weights as well are applied by the device scale factor. So basically, inside your settings on your device, you can change the font size up and down. So if you make your font size really large when you do this thing with the Flutter, all the fonts in your app are going to be really large because on that device you've chosen it to be really large, right? And that's what you want it to do because it's accessibility, right? Like for people that have a hard of sight or they can't see properly, they need to make their font size bigger or change it into contrast mode on various other things. So yeah.
Alrighty.
The answer is, how do you make those the same as those in the design? You don't. You just edit it until they are the same, and then you're going to be changing them anyway because it will change based on all the different factors.
And another, I mean, with Figma to Flutter, the best you can do is if you're just doing Android, then tell them to limit it to Material 3. If you're just doing iOS, human interface guidelines. If you're doing both, well, welcome to reality. As Simon said, life is complicated.
I mean, you can match the device that you're running it on to the device you're designing for. And once you've got it right there, you then need to still customize it to work with all the various sizes and scale for different screen dimensions and so on.
Hey, Simon, I've got something that we might know a little bit about. What's the best way to improve an app's performance when trying to render a high number of images? Step 1, don't use 4K images for your icons.
Yeah, I mean,
not kidding.
So there's actually a there's a scale thing. You can add the width and height to your image widgets, and then that will scale the image down. And actually will store it in memory. There's also a scale factor you can also apply, which will also apply like a generic scale factor. But those actually get applied and cached at those dimensions inside the image cache. But ideally, you want to pre-size your images. So there's actually a Firebase. If you're using Firebase, there's a Firebase extension called Image Resize. Hey, Nilo. And the Firebase extension, you install that, and then you give it like a directory in your storage. So when you upload a picture, it will then process it and make all the thumbnails and different sizes and whatever else you want, different like JPEGs and PNGs and whatever else. So yeah, it's worth checking into.
Come on. I'm sorry. I hope I got your name right. No, it's irresponsibility. With great power comes great irresponsibility. Nilay, for those who don't know, Nilay has been doing the social media and community building for Flutter for 4 years now, I believe. And congratulations. And I'm so sorry for Nilay because she has been so successful in this. She's sort of kind of had her job shift to where she has more management responsibilities now. Remember, folks, no good deed goes unpunished. And yep, but we love Nilay. We don't get to see as much of her as we used to, but we love Nilay. All righty.
Right. Come, questions.
Querying a fire support with collection group query.
Mm-hmm.
But they can't find the document path in the snapshots.
But I can't find the documents path in the snapshots. How can I get them? A collection group query. Oh, in the response. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's the document. It's the document ID, isn't it? I mean, it's.
Does the document ID include the path?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've only ever used the data from the snapshots.
The API actually uses a parent system. I'm pretty sure. It's called parent. Have a quick look. I mean, it's in the API. I mean, let's have a quick look though, because I'm kind of curious because it's been a while since I've done a collection group query. It's what's the base class? Firestore, something like that. Firebase Firestore. That's the one. Collection group returns back a query of map to string, query of a particular location. There's parameters. Expose the parameters of the query delegate. Get.
This is an interesting one.
Okay, so gets this query for a specified collection group, right? And then the query you're doing snapshots on, and you're getting your query snapshot back, and that has a list of documents, right?
Simon, I'm not quite understanding where Frederick is going with this, but thinking should show the structure of Firestore.
Oh, he means like I think it should show what I'm looking at. Yeah, I can do that.
Okay.
So I was just going through the up on stream.
Yep.
Yeah. So I was just taking a look through. So what we're just talking about is in Firebase Firestore, which is the entry point for accessing the Firebase. There's a collection group query. You can define collection groups anyway, and this gets a query for that. The data type is map of string to dynamic, which is kind of interesting because that is the data type that's the parameters here, expose the parameters. So maybe there's some information here in this parameters that you can glean from in the response query before you call snapshots. Snapshots is how you get that back that query of things at that location. It's kind of interesting. I do see what you're saying, because in the document, in your query snapshot, you have your list of query document snapshot, which is essentially each document. You have the ID of the document, but I think it's just there you go. Document reference will give you the collection it's in. There you are, parent. I knew it was parent. There you go. So basically, what you want to do is when you get your documents back from your snapshot, you get the actual query snapshot for the document, and inside there you've got reference, and reference has the parent, and that parent is the collection reference for the collection it's from. There you go.
There we go. That was not an easy one, Pia. Thank you. That was
also
quite good.
RTFM.
It's a fun manual.
Yes.
Because it's lots of fun. That's kind of like the I was looking into some SQL tutorials and documentation and such. And this one YouTube channel, they said that the Postgres manual was light reading. It's like that thick if it's printed out. Any way to track screen rendering time of a Flutter app in Firebase performance? Currently, it only shows Android activity name as one screen.
I mean, I would assume there is. I mean, from my thought about this, I've not tried it. I don't know if there is, but that seems to me like that should be a thing we should be doing anyway if you're going to use Firebase performance. So there's a big issue that you can raise with the Flutter Fire team on the repo. I'd say that what you can do is you can capture the performance information from the Flutter engine in the host app. You can also fire across. You can set up a persistent callback. So it's inside Dart. It'd be UI.window.add persistent callback. I think it is. No, hang on a minute. It would be the Flutter binding. Sorry. Flutter widget bindings dot instance dot set persistent callback. Now you give it callback on every frame, and you could capture you get the time that the frame is from. Reference the last frame gives you the delta, and then you could fire that over a method channel to your Android code, and then you can use the Firebase Performance Android SDK to submit the results to the API. There you go.
Here we go. A couple of quick, just fun comments here. I don't know why the clicking's not working very well. James, still trying to get out of set state and into global. James, there are mornings when I'm still trying to get out of bed. Senor Vargas, bienvenidos. Hola. And happy to have you here, senor. And we were talking about documentation, thick documentation. James says nothing like good documentation. James, I need a clarification on that. Are you saying that it's great that there's that documentation, or that it's nothing like actual good documentation? So is it nothing like good documentation that's great, or this is nothing like good documentation?
To be honest, though, when you start, I think the point, I have to say that it's just a remark on the fact that, just thinking about this, I'd say that's really great, because whenever you start working with a package or a framework or something, having good documentation is key.
Yeah.
Right. Like
it
can
needs
really
to be
paint-
organized in a way that will keep you reading, though, because here's the thing: if you start at the beginning and you get deep in, people who are not familiar with the system, and I ran into this with Flutter in the beginning, and Simon, you were there when we had a bunch of talks with people about it, and they made massive changes to the Flutter documentation, and now I would definitely say it's best in the world.
I think,
but it's human readable now.
Yeah.
And that when people start reading the documentation, you can't overwhelm them with terms about the framework and minutia on the very first things you present. You need to start it out and then suck them into the black hole gradually rather than pull them in all the way. You know, if you're going to boil a frog, do it slowly.
As I learned early in my technical writing career, one of the most important things was to always speak in the words and language of the reader.
The reader.
So start with what you know the reader to know, and then you can slowly add on to that. But
because if you're speaking in terms the reader doesn't know, then you lost them.
Yeah, exactly.
And the thing in the very, very beginning in alpha, the documentation for Flutter was written by engineers on the Flutter team for other engineers on the Flutter team. And if you didn't know the terms, you were lost.
Yeah.
But fortunately, they have done a great deal to fix all that. And it's time for the next. Why is my clicking not working? For the next question. Is it possible to protect the Flutter app from being reverse engineered when it's already in production or on someone's phone? This harkens back to when Simon said, if your software is on someone else's device and they're determined.
You can make it very hard. There are always ways of making it very hard. You said, is it possible to protect a Flutter app from being reverse when it's already in production on someone's phone? No. Is the answer to that. I mean, if you already shipped it and it hasn't put the protection in it, it's not protected, is it? So there's nothing you can do about that. However, you can do this thing where you add protection, and then the longer you have that one out there, the less likelihood is that the old is going to change from the old version, and you're protecting something. So at the end of the day, is you can ship your code with Dart obfuscation turned on. And all that kind of stuff to give yourself added protection. You can also use standard practices for compression and encryption of your binaries to also add a layer of complexity to the decompilation process. Those are normally tools that you can pay for. There's some open source tools. I don't know if they work on Android or iOS or what. There's also Guard Square and other companies like they're the people that make ProGuard that actually offer services and libraries that you add to your app to give you active protection. That is, they literally have a piece of code that runs inside your app that actively scans the memory for changes. So if someone's trying to manipulate your app, it detects it and will shut the app down or make it not work again or whatever you want. So there's various things like that are in play. If you just search reverse engineering Flutter apps, you'll find quite a few articles now on similar topics and going through. But again, it's not simple. There's no like press a button and get the source code back, right? That's not going to happen anytime soon.
Okay. I'm just making a couple of quick changes to something here, so that I can show it.
Well, that's that one done.
There we go. Alrighty. Sharing yet another one.
Do we have a question?
And this has to do with using Flutter Web with Firebase
Can't
and flavors.
see anything. Can't see anything.
You can't see that.
It's way too small.
I don't know that I can do anything about that because
move closer to your screen.
Share a portion of your screen. You can also put it in presentation mode.
Can you do a portion on this? Anyway, there is at least in IntelliJ, it's got a GUI for it. You can do build flavors.
To be honest, Flutter Web doesn't support flavors.
Right. we had put something as flavors, but really what we did was we aimed it at a different main file.
What you can do, you give it, you can just do different target main files and build each one. That gives you flavors, because a different entry point, you can specify like a different enum on your main function to the rest of your app, so it knows what one it's running. Something simple,
production database versus the dev database,
or something like that. With Firebase, so when you use Firebase on Flutter Web, you give it the config. That's like a little block of parameters. If you use the Invitae's Flutter Firebase CLI tool, it generates that in Dart, and you can just use different sets of those with different Dart entry points to load different Firebase configurations for web. There you go.
Okay, and James has. Whoops, I'm sorry. Wrong one, James. There we go. Hey, James. James is prolific in chat. We like James.
That's good. Thank you.
All righty. Any error in put future microtask? Okay, in other words, is it a problem to put a future.microtask in init state?
For the purpose of calling an API before load screen. No, it's not per se, right? So in fact, you don't future.microtask, you actually want schedule microtask, which actually goes into the zone. Future.microtask is making a future that completes the microtask, which I believe, remember rightly. Sure, I mean it works. I mean basically you can start any future, store it in your state, and then you can use a future builder to then monitor that state to decide what to show.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and
that's exactly what we do.
There's also the point of backing it up even further. If you're talking about before the loading screen, is Enzo talking about getting all of this done while the splash screen is up?
Yeah.
Because you can take it even higher up in the tree and run that before you render your first actual home page. You just do it while the splash screen is up and extend the splash screen.
Yeah, I actually I did an example of this back in 2020. A couple of years ago, I posted in chat. It's defer init, I've called it. It's a little sample of having a service starting up, checking for login before your app starts up, and it defers the first frame of graphics in the Flutter engine before, so that way you can load something up. It's just an example. Don't have to use anything like this way. It's just a quick throw together example. So,
and my very next video for my screencast is going to be using run app twice in main, so that you can have an animation, a very simple animation going on while you're doing the rest of your initialization that may take 5 or 10 seconds.
Yeah.
And it's very cool. You use run app twice, and yes, that's legal, and yes, that's actually pretty productive to do something like that.
Interesting. Have not even thought of that one.
Soon, very soon. I should get it out in the next week or so, because I really need to do video for my.
Okay, I'm going to skip to the last question for just a moment, just because I put a link in the chat for this right here. We,
when you get hired,
I got to find it. Yeah. The highly subjective roadmap to learn Flutter. You get through the first couple sections on that. You don't have to finish. You don't even have to start the great big section at the bottom, the last one, which what I am referring to here. Let me move this over to here. I have to rearrange just a couple windows. But this is our go-to, which is the highly subjective roadmap to learning Flutter. Again, this is by Alexander Lushenko, lucky man to be husband of Anna Lushenko. And both of them are Flutter GDEs. Talk about a power couple. So this is his highly subjective roadmap. You learn the basics, getting into your IDEs and Git, and then also into code style, regular OOP, functional programming. Then you get into the Flutter framework itself, the main design patterns that are used in Flutter. Then we get into, here's our RESTful API, also GraphQL. Simple persistence right here. Now you start getting deeper. By the time you get down, I guess maybe even,
Lots
I
and
don't
lots
know,
of stuff.
by the time you get here, you might be junior. And then
I think there's also said that you need to build some apps, right? Like if they're own apps, you need to build a good couple of apps and get them out there.
Absolutely. And they don't even have to be very good, and they definitely don't have to be original. You need something in your GitHub repo.
You have to
that
publish them either.
shows.
That's
You don't
it's
even
about
have to
building
put them
them
on the
end to
App
end.
Store. You don't want to be an idiot and have them be able to highlight your code and run a Google search for it and find out you stole it from someone else. Write your own code. So there is that.
Rebar. What would you guys suggest as a reference to start creating isolates parallelism for Flutter Web? You don't use isolates on Flutter Web. You use workers. And in fact, there's a package for workers on Flutter Web. Web workers, I think it's called.
There's the one that isolates you. Sorry for the misuse of the word there. So that it works on either web workers or isolates, depending on what platform you're on.
I bring it up here, actually. The one you're thinking of, I believe, is this one. If we're correct. Here we go.
Let's see, isolated worker.
Yeah, is that the one?
Yep, I think. Yes, that one.
Most platforms use Flutter isolate, except on web where it uses a worker instead. Yeah, that's the one.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
It says not a one-off worker, so it must be maintaining some sort of pool, which would be nice.
Share platform worker. I don't know. Yeah. So there's a bunch of stuff out there. There you go.
Yeah. Too bad it hasn't been updated in 11 months. But, 3 months. Okay, that's not bad.
That's 3 months. It's also like maybe nothing needs to be updated.
True.
Okay, and I'm going to need to jump here, but I did want to make one more comment real quick. Afraid of rejections, wanting to make sure that you're ready before trying to apply for a job. The thing is, the way to get over the fear of rejections or the fear of public speaking and making a fool of yourself, honestly, and I sounds like a joke, but it's the truth. If you're afraid of making a fool of yourself in front of an audience, the way you get over that is to make a fool of yourself in front of an audience so many times you just don't care anymore.
Yeah. Same as that. Like,
okay, that's us being on the stream. Okay, we look confident because we've messed up so many times it just doesn't mean anything anymore to us.
It's showbiz. That's how it works.
Also, yeah. What's wrong with rejections? Each time you get a rejection, you can ask them, "Why did you reject me? What could I do better next time?" Ask them.
And a lot of them are, people want to be nice. So if you have the ear of the people who made the decision,
isn't it? I think in the UK, I believe they have to answer that question. I think there's a thing for that. I don't remember. But the point here is that, if a lot of time they want to help, they'll tell you what you did wrong, and then how to improve better, or where your skills, or you could even, or if my skills aren't up to your level that you're looking for, what could I better skill myself on for maybe reapplying in the future or something like that. You could do a lot of things there.
If you're afraid of doing it poorly, do it wrong a lot. You'll get better at it eventually. It takes years.
One of the things I really like to do is when I have client meetings where they're still selecting me and then I get rejected. If I have the kind of relationship with them that I would like to have, I'll ask them, what was the disqualifying factor? And I have been told that more often than not. If I can get a chance to get that question into the people that were making the decision, they almost always say, well, it's because of this or because of that. and they don't have any reason not to be honest with you at that point.
Yeah. And the other side of that is they might come back and go, you didn't have experience in web workers. We're just talking about that, right? You're like, okay, I wasn't applying for a role with web workers, so I'm glad I didn't get that job, right? That's the kind of thing you can do, right?
So, another thing too, I mean, and it should go without saying, unfortunately, it doesn't, especially with people who don't get out very often and tend to get lonely. Don't let the reason for your rejection be that you tried to get the receptionist's phone number before going into the interview. You know, don't try to ask their employees out to dinner when you're there for a job interview. I mean, I'm not kidding. I know people who have been asked to go out to dinner during the job interview. But anyway, all right, I got to run. You all have fun.
Thanks for dropping by.
Have a good one.
Take it easy. Thanks for answering about half the questions. Probably more than half. I've been busy pushing buttons. What do we got? We got 5 in the queue, right? So let's see.
I guess so. Make sure you keep your questions coming in. We still got a little bit of time left. So put your queue in front of your question.
We can pick probably another 10 questions, maybe another 5.
Get these queues in front of your questions, and we'll get to them.
Yep.
Right. Next question. What exactly does it mean that everything is a widget? What exactly is a widget?
Not everything is a widget first.
I mean, the term is because, like in most UI systems, you don't put a widget. Like you wouldn't have a widget called provider, right? That would be handled by something else. In the Flutter, the way the tree works, the way the UI works, everything is a widget in the UI. So a widget is a name. Oh, it's an old name, isn't it? For UI perspective, it's a component of the UI.
Right.
It doesn't have to be the smallest component. It can be a component made of other components. It's just the notion of a collection of user interaction. It's a really vague topic. I'm trying to think. There's actually, in fact, do you know what we should do? I'm kind of curious about this myself.
Pull up the widget page.
Here. Hang on. Yeah, exactly. I'm going to go here and go to api.flutter.dev and search widget. And what does there you go. Widgets are the central class of hierarchy in the Flutter framework. A widget is an immutable description of part of the user interface. There you go. Widgets can be inflated into elements which manage the underlying render tree. Widgets themselves have no mutable state. All their fields must be final. If you wish to associate a mutable state with a widget, consider a stateful widget which creates a state object. Blah 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 blah. There you go. Read it all, and then you've got other classes you can go read, and other things you can read into from this point onwards. For some reason, the documentation site has been really slow for me today. Really slow. Click on things, and it just takes forever to load. Anyway.
Must be the connection to the UK is on a thin pipe today or something.
Not my connection. At the moment.
I know.
I got gigabit, man. I got gigabit. It should be fast.
Right. But not gigabits all at once.
Yeah.
They come in serially. So maybe there's.
But here's the thing, right? That should be on CDN. So that should be being served from London.
Oh, it should be. Should be. It's not like Google has a CDN or anything.
I know it's not like they have the whole CDN for like YouTube and everything. We're all around the world. Yeah. Right. CDN, by the way, is Content Delivery Network. It's how if you go look it up, if you're interested it's an interesting topic. I highly recommend a good reading for most developers to understand how that works. It's basically they make a computer. Google will put a computer, a little server, in your ISP's network. Like your internet provider might have lots of them, in fact, and inside nodes, they're inside data centers, inside nodes are in cities and everything else, so that when you ask for content, it gets it from the nearest server closest to you. And that way, it's a very short amount of time to get the traffic to you. And that way also, the more people that request that content, let's say a very popular YouTube video will be hosted in that node so that it doesn't have to travel across the entire internet to get to everyone, which means there's less traffic on the internet, which is very, very important for the amount of data we send and transmit nowadays. Anyway,
I will say just on the widget question, just before we move on, the widget question, you as Flutter programmers are basically going to be interacting with creating your own widgets from a stateful widget or a stateless widget. That's going to be your two primary things. You'll inherit from that. But all the rest of the widgets that are out there, you're going to be composing into your widget. You don't inherit from any of those other ones. Well, that's a broad rule, but start with that.
Yeah.
You want to put those in as part of your widget, and you're going to have a stateful or a stateless widget that has as one of its components something like a linear slider or whatever, right?
Yeah.
It's not even a widget, but make that up. But that's kind of the hierarchy as you need to see it. Is that there's a stateful widget, a stateless widget, and then there's a bunch of specialized widgets, and then your custom widgets are derived from one of those.
It's widgets all the way down.
Yes, widgets all the way down until it's not anymore. Yes.
Oh, we have another moderator in the house. Oh,
that was when Eli joined.
Oh, okay.
Because she has moderator powers, right?
Frederick Chang. I would like to become a Flutter brackets Android programmer. Should I be aware of Java or Kotlin? Well,
sure.
I think no matter the fact that you're building Flutter, obviously you need to understand Dart and you have to understand the Flutter framework and what it provides. But you're always going to need to work with the underlying system. At some point, there's a level of doing development with Flutter that you go, I need something custom. There's no plugin out there that does it for me. I need to do it myself. And at that point, you need to understand the underlying system. Now, what you can do as a beginner is go look at other people's plugins, the first-party plugins in the Flutter plugin. So github.com/flutter/plugins. See how they're made. I'm trying to understand how Java and Kotlin is different and how they work. But to be honest, at the end of the day is if I need to go do something on iOS, I'm going to need to know Swift or Objective-C, depending, right?
Yeah.
And if I'm going to need to do something on Windows, I'm going to use C++ because that's the main language for that, and so on and so forth. So as you said, if you're primarily targeting Android and you're using Flutter, you should be aware of Java and Kotlin. Maybe go read up about it. Maybe just use the Android wizard in Android Studio to build an Android app. Follow some tutorials online. Just have a cursory understanding of how apps come together because you might need it. But to be honest, very rarely do I need to go in and do something in a platform. And if I do, it's to call like a platform function or to do a small little piece of code. It's not like I'm building in half my app in Android, right? So
I've written a lot of code being only a Flutter expert and not Java, Kotlin, Swift, Objective-C. I know very little of those, except I was playing with Objective-C many, many years ago for a little while, but that's it. So there's almost all of the interesting and well-tested plugins for things that are requiring the jump to the platform channels are written already. They're already in the pub. So unless you're writing to some new exotic API or something like that, you probably won't have to delve too far into platform channels.
I'd tell you something else. The other thing to mention is that a lot of these providers of SDKs, let's say analytics providers or some other random thing, they'll have a HTTP API.
Yeah.
Just do it in Dart. Then you never have to leave the Dart land, right? So there's other benefits to that.
Yeah.
Hopefully that helps.
Hopefully.
Right.
What do we got?
Next question. Best way to test application before final release.
Did you see my reply to that? My reply.
No,
was
I didn't.
Yeah.
So the point here is you should not be testing before your final release. You should be testing all the way along the way, right?
Yeah.
So first of all, you should be doing unit tests. That's like discrete logic tests. You're testing at the function component level. You have integration tests, which is where you're testing things in situ. So actually you're running your real app and seeing things work. Now, what you can do is do something like use Flutter Gherkin, or that's where you run like Cucumber scripts. These are scenarios. And this is kind of what you do before. Make sure you've got these kind of things before final release. These are type of integration tests. And the idea is you can write out a series of scenarios where user logs in, then they press this button, and they do this, then they do that. And then you write these like step definitions, and you tend to press certain buttons in the app and do certain things. And the idea is that you can then you press a button and it will run through all the common things a user must do in your app, and it will verify that it'll work with any problem. you run your unit tests on every merge of a PR or a branch or something to verify that you don't break your code each time you make a change. So there's lots of things like that you can do. The other thing you can do is Firebase has a test lab. And in fact, I think the Play Store actually now submits builds to the store. You get like a report when you upload your app. And it will tell you if your app crashed on certain devices and if the crash happened, what it was that crashed. So you can go in and fix it. So that can also be beneficial, especially if you're targeting a certain audience. Maybe those devices are used in that audience in that area of the world, things like that.
Also, a strategy that Google has adopted that now that I hear about it, I think it's probably something that more companies can adopt, is they have a sort of a light suite of tests that get run before anything can get merged to master. But they also have a heavier suite that they can run that's much more intensive before they release it as stable.
Yeah.
So you might consider that too.
Yeah. Normally, I would have a series of unit tests that are run for the merging, and then full integration test suite. And also, there's also manual testing.
Yeah.
Just hammer away. The best thing you can do in that point is not to do it yourself. You cannot do manual testing yourself because you built it. So you know what buttons you need to press and how much time it takes between button presses.
Yeah.
You always need someone else to do it, someone that's not used your app before. Right? Yep. Because you get this kind of I don't know what is it like Stockholm syndrome or something? I don't know. Like you get used to your own app and you won't see the faults in it anymore. Right? You won't realize that, oh, that's a really bad way of doing that. I have to press this button 6 times to do a common action. It should be one button press or something like that. Whereas a new user that comes to it that doesn't know what they're doing when they first use your app is going to go, well, what do I do now? And you go, oh, I should tell the user that they should press this button over here the first time. And this kind of like you get these things that you cannot get unless you get a first time user.
There's an old anecdote in the testing world where one of the customers or one of the employees comes up to the developer and says, it didn't work. It said press any key. So I pressed the letter C. And he goes, why did you press the letter C? He says, well, it says any key and C is the first letter of my name. And another guy says, no, that means you're supposed to press return. And then the developer says, no, that means you're supposed to press space. Well, it's like, well, no, it says any key, right? And they just didn't try all the other trials. So yeah, that's an old story from QA. Yeah.
I was going to say there's also just thinking about what I said, that there's also companies out there, and this is when you're talking like corporate level work. There's companies out there, you give them 10, 20 grand, and they will go and you say, I want 50 testers between the age of this and this. They must have a background in this. They do that. Like they find a targeted audience of the kind of people that you think are going to be using your app, and they will get them to try your app. And they will give you proper reports and everything on screenshots and video recordings and all sorts on your app. That's professional software testing. So,
all right, we still got 7 in the queue, 6 in the queue, actually.
Carrying on.
Let's move on.
How to access and save the cookies from the web view with the cookie manager. So I actually made a modified version of WebView a long time ago to do this for me because it didn't exist. But if I remember rightly, it now exists in WebView 3.0. Let's go find out. This is here we go. What's it? WebView Flutter or something? I don't remember. No, that's not right. WebView Flutter. That's the one. I am right. Ha. So yeah, this is the official package, flutter.dev. Not yet a Flutter favorite. Interesting. Anyway, is this it? It is it. Change log. I thought this was it. Yeah, it is it. Right. Yeah, so we go over to the API reference. WebView cookie. So it does deal with cookie. They are cookie manager platform. I thought it was cookie manager. Yeah. So they are set cookie, clear cookie. Do you want to get a cookie? Was that what was he saying? I want to access and save the cookies from the web view. Doesn't look like you can do that with the built-in one. However, you can make a platform channel. So imagine, as I said, if we go to the Android SDK here and do a search for cookie manager. Oh my god, the keyboard. Right, there's the cookie manager, and then you can go get the cookie manager on the native app. And maybe there's a way in here. I mean, there might not even be a way of doing it in the native platform, in which case you can't do it. It might be that cookies are like a private information. So yeah, look, set cookie, set third cookie. There's no read cookies, is there?
That's
odd. Get cookie for your
yeah.
Get
Not
cookies.
read.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, you could call this function from a method channel. And if you go to flutter.dev and go to the documentation, over here you've got platform integration, writing platform specific code, and this talks about how this works. You build a method channel, and there's lots of documentation about how you do it and how you build examples and all the rest of it. Yeah, just don't leave all your. I'm not joking. I've seen so many. Don't leave the example code in your plugin, please. Delete the example code that you don't use. I'm not joking. I've seen about the amount of packages I've seen that publish the default get version from the platform as their method channel interface or something. Oh, God. Anyway, moving on. Roberto, nice to see you again. How to make a reusable future builder such that we can pass the future the builder directly in the stateless widget.
A statless widget.
How to make a reusable future
I didn't
builder.
get this. I didn't get. I couldn't.
Such as we can pass the future the builder directly in the stateless widget.
Build? Maybe pass it to the builder.
I mean, you just put a future builder inside a stateless widget and pass the future in.
The problem is the future has to be held somewhere, and so there needs some state location.
You're gonna have you have to have the future stored somewhere in a stateful widget or some global state or somewhere. You need to hold on to it, right? Otherwise, every time that widget gets built, it's going to rebuild the future, which is not what you want.
Which I have a video about.
Yeah. see previous video. There you go. Is there a chance to get a remote job in a country like UK if a person is located in an Asia country? Yes. There you go.
Yeah. There's always a chance.
There's always a chance. I think the key here is a lot of that kind of stuff kind of revolves around linguistics, believe it or not. So you can be the most competent programmer in the world, but if you can't communicate with the team or work with the team, you're not a good fit for the role, right? So I'm just being open here. I've seen this before, and I've seen people get turned away, and that is when they don't speak the language very well that the team is speaking, and it's very hard for communication to take place. This is not going to be right for the role, so the employer doesn't want to employ you. So, sorry, I'm just thinking about this when you read your question. That's what came up to my mind. So, I think I just say, make sure that's not a factor. Go get Duolingo. Make sure you practice your English, perhaps, and also. A lot of the stuff is done by doing. So speak to more English speaking people. You said a country like UK. I'm going to use that example. Speak to more English speaking people, and you get you have to get the naturalness going, so you can better communicate. And obviously, if you're talking to people about programming, you're going to know all the programming concepts. So again, that also helps.
Yep,
that's the best I can say. Because anyway, there's always a chance of getting a job anywhere. Like the other side of this obviously is about what the type of job, if it's contracting or if it's employment. If it's employment, what the regulations are about between two different countries. There's a lot more than goes into this, right? And you have to look that up yourself, right? Go look at the government websites for the various places that you want to work. But there's no reason. And most of the time, this is now a commonplace thing. Digital workers working all around the world. It's common everywhere now.
Yeah.
Right. Moving on.
Yeah, we're not taking any more questions. Come back next week if you want your questions answered. But we do have 4 in the queue, and we'll do those before we sign off.
Cool. Perfect.
Intended. I guess.
Right. What's next? Dart is still intended. Dart
Intended.
Is Dart still intended to kill JavaScript? Flutter is a strategy to kill. No, it's not. First of all, we don't work for Flutter. I want to be clear. We don't work for Google. And we don't work for Flutter. Like, this is not. We're the Flutter community members, and so on. It was never intended to kill JavaScript in that way. It was intended as an alternative to JavaScript when it first got made, and that was donkeys years ago, and it's changed so much since then. So it's not even in that same ballpark anymore. It like JavaScript is over here and Dart's over here. Like Java. That's a bit ungracious of me, but my point is that JavaScript's been around a long time, and it's slow moving, right? And Dart is very much fast moving. And yeah, there's never been we'll move on. There's never been that point. So
Yeah.
Mytho. What are some approaches of doing app monitoring and gathering metrics without using Firebase tools? There's tons of open source packages, and most of them you submit a HTTP thing, HTTP transactions. What you need to do, and I need to be clear about this, is don't send HTTP transactions each time someone does something. That's a way to use up all your users' bandwidth and use up all your data, or use up all the phone battery and everything. Really, really bad. What you need to do, and what all the official packages like Google Analytics and everything else do, is they batch up. So they'll take everything that was done within a certain period of time. That's why debug mode on Google Analytics works, because when you turn it on, it means send immediately and don't batch, right? Which is why you don't have it turned on all the time. It's only there to make sure it's working. Once you know it's working, it batches it up. And the idea is that it might be like 3 days worth of or more, right, of access to your app is all sent in one big sort of lump over to the server in one HTTP call. And you can just make your own API. There's open source packages out there for monitoring. There's a ton of them. I'm trying to remember the ones. I can't remember any off the top of my head. I've used several. But frankly, you can just. It's all about where you want to put that monitoring data and statistics, right? Also, be clear about things about the law around this, right? You need to get a lot of time you need to get your user privacy for permissions to submit to use their data, and you need to let them turn off your recording of the data. Go look up GDPR, and that's a European standard, but also it's just good practice, right? If a user doesn't want to have their personal data tracked in any way, or even anonymously, don't do that. And then the platforms, Android and iOS, have limitations on what you can record and what you can and can't do in terms of being anonymous recording of analytical data. So again, be cautious. You don't want to come foul of those policies and get your app removed off the store because you forgot to remove the person's user email address or something. I don't know.
Okay.
Right, moving on. Is it possible to create an SDK for a desktop application to create plugins that are loaded dynamically, or would I like to add a plugin written in Java for a special folder and to load it in the application?
Is there a Flutter part to this question?
Well, as I say, let's say he's making a Flutter desktop application, right?
Yeah.
So he wants to create an SDK for a Flutter desktop application. Anyway, he wants to create an SDK for a desktop application, and that desktop application creates plugins that are loaded dynamically. What does it mean he wants to create a plugin that loads dynamically into a desktop application?
I think this is more than we can answer in the remaining few minutes.
I think I give you a few minutes to get an update, simplified question in that if you want this answered. Otherwise, it's not going anywhere.
Is there a part of it we could answer? Maybe there's only some part of it that would make sense.
I'm looking at this going. You just build plugins. Like, yes, you can build plugins for desktop applications. That's not a problem. And you can even build a desktop application that can create plugins that are loaded dynamically. You can do that.
Right.
So what you're looking for, though, is that, if you're trying to make an application to create other applications, this is compilation. This is the step that is, you could ship Dart with your app, and then you could have the person type in some Dart code or something, or I don't know, whatever you want, and then you tell it to build, and it builds you out a DLL file or dylib or .so or whatever, and you can load it into an application. It's literally like perfectly possible, or just like most most plugin systems work by your final library file that you produce has one export, which is by a specific name, like plugin table or something, and then it sends back like a list of functions or something like that, and they're organized in a certain way that the application, when it loads it knows the first one is the load function, the second one is the save function, third one is this. There's various ways of doing this, but the point is then any language can be used to build the plugin. So you build this. What you're doing is you're defining what's called an ABI, application binary interface. And when you define that ABI for your library, you can use C++, you can use Dart, you can use Java, you can use whatever you want to build your plugin for your own desktop application. And it's exactly what Flutter does, exactly what other things do. No big deal.
Sure.
There's plenty of information out there on doing this kind of thing.
Yep. Couple more questions.
Roberto, how does Value Notify compete with state provider in performance? If I have drop-down menu and pass the value to the notifier, I only use provider if I'd like to pass the values around. I'm going to give you a pretty good answer here. It doesn't matter.
True.
I mean, the point here is how many times is that drop-down menu going to be pressed, and how fast is going to be pressed? Because unless that's like 1,000 times a second, the performance is not going to matter.
Right. Yeah. You're gonna be millions of page refreshes in before the drop down is selected. So
right. So I think the point here is, if you're using notifiers, continue using notifiers. If you're going to use providers, use providers. Just make it consistent, make it easy to edit, make the code clean to work on. I know as a developer, performance is a big deal, and trust me, I know I like getting high performing apps and all the rest of it. But it should be a primary concern, especially not for this user interaction. User interactions are bloody slow, in comparison. You want your performance to be impacted on things you do a lot of the time, and especially high calculated loops, like high computational heavy code, Yeah.
And slightly faster than user interaction, you also have like network transactions. People keep thinking, I got to be fast because I'm talking to the network. No, the network takes forever compared to your running CPU.
Yeah. It's quite funny. Yeah, it's like the amount of time, there's a diagram. Look up if anyone wants to, you can look up like the pyramid of memory. There's like a diagram which is like this pyramid, and it shows you your fastest to your slowest. And the fastest is registers on the CPU. Then you've got like L1 cache and L2 cache. Then you've got your RAM. And your RAM is already I think it's in order of 100 times slower than the registers, maybe 1,000 times slower than the registers. And that's just what your program normally does all the time, is that memory in those registers. Then it keeps going down this list. And way, way, way down the bottom is like networking at like 10 seconds.
Yeah. Exactly.
And then I don't know, but yeah, user interactions are you'd be lucky to get 2 interactions per second.
And the other thing to keep in mind is that the folks at in Mountain View have done a lot of work to kind of squeeze out as much as they can in the framework already. So your real only concern is make sure you're getting your 60 frames a second. Make sure you're not taking so long that you're having drop frames.
So is Remy on providers. That, like these people that build these libraries do a lot to make the libraries performant in a lot of different scenarios. How does Value Notify compare with state provider in performance? I mean, they're exactly the same. The Value Notify is different because a Value Notify is simply like a list of listeners. You add or remove listeners, and then once the value changes, it notifies the listeners. There's no like rebuilding widgets or anything like that. So whereas you get to choose what you want to do. You're a listener, you get to go, oh, is this value different for the last one, or whatever you want to do, make rebuild my widget. When a state provider is very much you've linked up the provider to rebuilding your widget, right? Your context, which is again the two different provider packages, but obviously one has a different impact to the other. Right. Let's carry on. Bartek, what is the best way? Here's the one that answered the last question, wasn't it? We can answer. What is the best way to perform an action from within a view model on, for example, a text editor controller or scroll controller stream custom notification class, such as a scroll notification? What is the best way to perform an action within a view model?
Act. Do something.
Yeah, I'm trying to say, like, for example, is he asking which one is best out of these? What's the best way to? I mean, the best way is just to do it. I don't.
Best way is always too ambiguous to answer without more context. So
I mean,
we'll just off to that.
Text editor controller, scroll control stream, custom notification class such as scroll notification. I did perform an action. Perform an action. I mean, like button press action, a scroll action. Because if you do a scroll action, there's a scroll controller. If you're trying to interact maybe with some data in the back end, there's a stream. If you're trying to do modify text of the controller, then use the text of the controller. I know I'm not trying to be facetious, but that's what I get from your question. So sorry.
How do you work better? Yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting from it. And this is just personal note for you.
Yeah, hope Simon and Dash are coping with the record London temperatures. Dash has still got his hair, so that's good. It hasn't fried yet.
Yeah.
Actually, I went and bought myself an AC unit because of the temperatures we've had the last few days. Like it got up to 39 where I am. That's 100. I think it's 104 or something Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
Something like that. I'll turn it on. I turned it off for the stream. Okay, I don't know if you can hear that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. But it's actually come down in temperatures. And Cameron's from Glasgow. Yeah, it's definitely much cooler. It's very. I haven't had it on. It's much cooler today. And in the evening, especially like now, it's getting to the sun's gone down, so it's quite nice. What is it now? We're down to 26. That's nice. It's a reasonable temperature.
Nice.
Where's 26 in for our American viewers?
I think it's 230, something like that. I don't know.
78 Fahrenheit.
Yeah, right. I can't ever get it.
So yeah, 78. Is you consider that quite cool, Randall? 78.8.
Yeah, no, 78 is still warm.
Yeah,
but it's like slightly warmer than you would keep indoors.
Yeah,
not much more.
So yeah, let me just put So we got up to 39/40. Yeah, it's 102/104 Fahrenheit. Ridiculous.
Yeah, that's swimsuit weather.
The problem is even then that's like outside. Then you got computers and everything else. It's just yeah, it's not good. Anyway,
okay.
It's been interesting. That's what I say.
One last question that snuck in under the or after the deadline, but okay.
Do you do code reviews?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think
you mean for me or me for a client? That's not a real clear question.
So something that we were talking about before, and something I was talking about before, and actually it would be nice to do, is to do this on stream maybe. So if someone wants to submit like their GitHub repo, I'll bring up a banner with the email address. You can go us at fluttercommunity.dev and get to all of us through that. And if you want to submit a request for a review, please do. And what we might do is then just review it on stream and comment on your code. Won't hold back. So that's up to your choice. Obviously, we're not there to be. We're it's a code review. There's being constructively critical about your code. Okay, don't take it as any sort of personal attack. If you know that's just is professional, right? Like it's about, oh, you can do this better by doing this. Don't take a certain person takes that as, oh, I did it wrong. I should have done it this way. That's never the case, because there's a 100 different ways of doing these things, right? But we're saying from our experience, there's a better way of doing it. It's more performant, or it's, I don't know, it makes more sense on the platform. Who knows, right? So yeah, if you want to submit a code review, we could do a code review on stream. In fact, I think that would be really interesting content. If anyone likes that idea, let us know. Email us. Let us know so that we know that we can do that. And we'll see where we go. Yeah. I did. James Johnson said that servers melted. It's nice. Here's the difference. We just don't have AC here. The houses aren't built with AC. There's no air. There's no like in America, like every wall has like an air duct in it that will have air vents that pumps. You know, they can have AC. Doesn't happen here at all. So it's like in Texas. I was talking to someone I know in Texas. They like go from an air-conditioned house into an air-conditioned car, from an air-conditioned car into an air-conditioned office. Like, and they don't. No one goes out in the middle of the day because it's too hot. Like I get this, right? But the point here is that here it's just not built that way. Like the train tracks are bending in the heat. The trains have to stop because they're just not built that way. Like they're painting, literally, they're painting the railway tracks with white paint to cool them down, to so the sun reflects off of them using the reflective paint, the UV reflective paint. So it's don't get me wrong. I know it can be hot in other places, but it's just not the construction and things here aren't built for that. So.
I worked for a summer on the Iridium project, a handheld cell phones to talk to satellites. And it was in Phoenix, Arizona, or one of the suburbs of that. And I remember going by in the US, we have used to have these time temperature boards where it would show the time for a while and it would show the temperature for a while. Well, as I drove by, it was 1:12 in the afternoon and it was 112 Fahrenheit. So the colon just flashed in and out. It was like, I'm not sticking around till 3.
We do have kettles in the UK.
Yeah.
I do find that interesting. Like when I went to America, that was very weird to me. Like everyone has a kettle. You cannot go into any home without having an electric kettle somewhere.
I've got mine right over here.
Is it a stovetop kettle? Because I know they're kind of popular in America.
No, it's just electric. It's a Breville, I think is what they call it.
I just find it curious because I think it's getting more popular. But yeah, like a lot of people, more. Here's the difference. In America, I think it's more common to have a drip coffee kind of machine.
Yes,
and to have like that, like a coffee maker indoors, than it is to have a kettle. Where we have a kettle, right? Mm-hmm. So
it's the difference between coffee and tea drinking too. I mean, I need to have the hot water for my tea. I don't drink coffee, so this is my only choice, really. But no, I love my electric kettle. It's just great. I got it maybe about 6 or 7, maybe 8 years ago, and been hauling it around with me ever since. And I'm a big tea drinker. There's tea in there right now, and having a good time. There's actually a whole 30-minute video on the relative efficiency of an electric kettle versus doing it over a gas stove or doing it
I've seen Technology Connections.
Yes.
Yeah, he's awesome. Technology Connections, man.
Always great stuff.
His videos on the a dishwasher stuff was awesome. Like he just I love the way he does reviews of inside reviews of technology. Anyway, right, I think that's it. I think we're going to call it. So thank you everyone for coming and all your questions, and get your questions in for next week. Email us if you want to, and I guess we'll see you then.
See you next week. Bye everybody.
Bye.
Goodbye.